Welcome. So in this video, we're going to be talking about another circular function, which is tan. Before we launch into the notes here, let's just quickly work through this presentation right here, and hopefully we get a better understanding as to what tan is. So in our last lesson, we talked about cos and sine. We talked about cos and sine, and we said, hey, if we're thinking in terms of our unit circle, cos is our x, sine is our y. Cos is our x, sine is our y. So that means if we're looking at this coordinate right here, this 1 is my cos value, this 0 is my sine value. That is very important that we understand that. Okay, so today we're introducing a new circular function, which is tan. Now what tan is sine over cos. Sine over cos. And how I want you to think about it, just to introduce this idea, is in terms of rise over run. Because if sine is this, well, it's clearly my rise, and cos is this, it's clearly my run. And we know that the rise over run is the gradient. So if we think of our tan as being our gradient, it will help us think about what we're doing here. And it's going to be the gradient of this line here, because it's rise and run of this, so it's going to be the gradient of this line right here. So let's fill out this table here. This is in your booklet. Let's fill this out, the tan column here. The first one that we're going to look at is when we have an angle of 0. So as you can see, this is what we're looking at. And if we were to use our simple definition of what tan is, it's sine over cos. You look at this coordinate right here. 0 is going to be my sine. 1 is going to be my cos, 0 over 1 is going to be 0. And we can also think of this in terms of gradient. The gradient of a horizontal line is 0. The gradient of a horizontal line is 0. The next angle we're going to look at is pi on 2 now. So if you look here, pi on 2, so it's 90 degrees. If we find out what our tan is going to be, well, it's simply going to be 1 divided by 0, and when we divide by 0, it's undefined. And if we also think of what the gradient of a vertical line is, it's undefined as well. And now we can just continue this around. So for pi, it's going to be 0 over -1, which is 0. And then for the next one, it's going to be -1 over 0, which is going to be undefined. And then finally, we come full circle around. So this is now 2 pi. It's going to be 0 over 1 again, which is 0. So hopefully you filled those out, and you just have a good understanding of what tan is. Tan is sine over cos, and it can also be thought of as the gradient. Okay, so now having gone through that, hopefully you've filled out this table here. I might just quickly fill it out as well, just so you're 100% sure what you're writing down here. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go, all right, it's this divided by this, 0 over 1 is 0. Then here it's 1 over 0 equals undefined. Then it's going to be 0 over -1, which is 0, then -1 over 0, which is undefined. And then finally, it's going to be 0 over 1, which is 0. Okay, so that's tan. And then you got your definition there. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, let's now just see if we can answer a few of these. And in your textbook for exercise 14C, you're only given questions like this. So nothing too tricky. Okay, so tan of pi. Well, if we think about that for a moment, that's 180 degrees. It's going to take me over here. So it's like finding the gradient of a horizontal line, and I know that's going to be 0. If we wanted to, we could say, well, this point right here is what? It is going to be -1, 0. And then we can say, well, that's going to be 0 over -1, which is going to be 0. So if you wanted to think about it in those terms as well, you can. Let's come over here now, 3 pi on 2. It's going to be here. So I'm going to think, well, what is the gradient of a vertical line? I immediately know that it's going to be undefined. But if you wanted to, you could also think about this in terms of sine over cos. You know that this point here is going to be 0, -1. So it's going to be -1 over 0. That's going to be undefined. As you can see, it's a bit quicker just to think about it in terms of gradient as opposed to dividing. But dividing is also extremely important that you know how to do it. All right, the next one is pi on 2. So immediately I know it's undefined because it's a vertical line. But we could also think about this in terms of what is this point? It's going to be 0, 1. So it's going to be 1 over 0, that's undefined. The next one is going to be -2 pi. Remember, this time what we're doing is we're going to go this way around, but that really doesn't change anything. It's still just going to be that point, which is 1, 0, 1 over, whoops, 0 over 1, which is going to be 0. Or you could think of the gradient of a horizontal line. When we are coming to this point here, this is where it becomes useful to think of in terms of gradient. As soon as I see 9 pi over 2, I know that it's either going to be up here or here, right? I immediately know that. And that means what I can say is that it's undefined, because I know that. So too over here, because it's negative 7 pi on 2, I know it's either going to be up here or down here. No need for me to figure it out. I know that either of those are going to be undefined because it's going to be vertical. For this one over here, negative 540 degrees, and it's negative, so that means I'm going to be going this way. That's 360 degrees, and now I just have to plus another 180 onto that, which will bring me here. So what I did there is I said, hey, I know that this is the same as negative 360 minus 180, and that means what I'm going to be left with is simply 0, because it's just taking me right there. And that's horizontal. Last one, tan of 90. Tan of 90 is just that one. As you can see, it's vertical line. It's going to be undefined. Okay, so having now gone through all of those, let's now work through some CAS questions here. Let me just grab my CAS. Here it is. So to answer these on the CAS, nothing too tricky. All you have to do is bring up tan, whoops, that's not tan. Now I'm going to type in 1.6. My calculator is in radians, so that's good. That's going to be my first answer. The next one is degrees. So I'm going to go again, trig tan 239. And then, because it's degrees and my calculator is in radians, I need to make sure I tell the calculator this is degrees. So I do that, I do that. Oh, and it gives me that funny answer there because I need to hit Control equals to give me what I want. And then the last one is going to be trig tan negative 3.8. It's in radians, so I don't have to change anything. Hit enter, there it is right there. So hopefully you got all those down. Hopefully that made sense. And yeah, I will see you in the next lesson.